On today's show, the Hawks are missing 8 players on Wednesday evening, and yet they were the much healthier team on the floor against the Portland Trailblazers on this Wednesday evening. The Hawks hold serve in a very strong, solid, across-the-board, ho-hum kind of effort. That's all you need to have in the NBA because every single game, it's a win or a loss, and this one was a win for the Hawks. We'll get into all of what transpired there and much more, and all that is coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1682 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Rowland, coming to you on a Wednesday evening into Thursday. And I want to encourage you at the top of the podcast to make us your first listen each and every day. Please subscribe to the Locked On Hawks podcast anywhere you find podcasts, places like Apple Podcasts, of course, and Spotify. We're also on YouTube as well as Pocket Casts, etc. If you want to find us, you can certainly do that. And I would very much appreciate you becoming a regular listener and subscriber to the show. But with all that out of the way, the Hawks held serve on this Wednesday evening, a 120-106 win at the hands of the Portland Trailblazers. If you are a new listener, first of all, welcome aboard. And what we do on this podcast on most game nights is talk about kind of the big picture, the context, the nuances, what transpired, what was good, what was bad, what players played well, etc. And that'll be coming up on today's podcast. But this is a third straight win for the Hawks. They're now 3-0 on this homestand. They avenge a pretty, not great loss in Portland a couple of weeks ago against a shorthanded Blazers team. They were in control most of the way. They didn't play incredibly well in the first half, I didn't think, but they were still up at halftime and then broke it open in the third quarter in the way that they probably should have in this game. Also, by the way, if you're a YouTube watcher, I usually have a better background than I do right now. I'm in the midst of a move, so my apologies there. Hopefully the audio quality is okay, but I am certainly in transit to save a long story and make it a lot shorter. So forgive me for that. But hopefully the content will be what you were looking for on this Wednesday into Thursday. So I want to zoom out a little bit and talk about the pregame situation in this spot. The Hawks have exactly the same roster that they had available on Monday. And if you missed it, by the way, I did a full episode on what was a insane comeback win for the Hawks on Monday against the Celtics. But they had the same roster in this game. But still, they're shorthanded. They were missing 8 guys, including Trae Young, Jalen Johnson, Onyeka Okongwu, et cetera, et cetera. Also, Dejounte Murray was on the injury report coming into the game with back soreness. He was actually questionable to play. Ended up playing, and spoiler alert, played very well in this spot, which certainly helped the Hawks big picture. And also, the game was in, of course, the same building as it was on Monday. It was a home game for the Hawks as it was on Monday. It wasn't a back-to-back, normal rest, no travel. And I'm saying all of that on purpose because the Hawks were actually favored by 11.5 points in this game, according to our friends at FanDuel. That actually matches the biggest favorite the Hawks have been all season long, only tied with a game against Detroit earlier this year at home when the Pistons just could not win a game. That's when the Pistons were the worst team in the league pretty clearly. And also the Hawks were much closer to full strength at that point. They had most of their guys for that game. So again, this happened 2 days after the Hawks were, yes, they won the game, but they were 10.5-point underdogs against Boston with exactly the same roster. So what happened here? Why would that be the case? Well, it speaks to just how grim the roster situation is right now for Portland. And honestly, I don't mean this in a negative way about anyone. It's just the fact that they have injuries, etc. I think it was the worst opponent the Hawks have seen this year. Recently, the Hawks played a game in Memphis where the Memphis Grizzlies were missing a similar amount of guys, but Portland, it was pretty dire in this one. Plus, the game was at home for Atlanta. The Blazers actually lost 7 games in a row coming in. They actually started 5 rookies in this game for the 3rd consecutive contest. But before they actually did that, these 3 games in a row, no team in the NBA had started 5 rookies since 2012 before that. And it's only happened like 5 times. 5 games really in the last 40, 50 years. It's a great – teams don't really do that on purpose. So they were missing. I would argue that the Blazers were missing their top 7 players, at least their top 5 or 6 players in this game. Just to name them off, they were missing Jeremy Grant, Anthony Simons, DeAndre Ayton, Shaedon Sharpe, Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams, and Matisse Thybulle for this game. And if you look at the roster, again, I'm not picking anyone in particular, but Scoot Henderson's, of course, a pretty famous player, a high draft pick this year. But aside from Scoot, there were really no prominent players. Of course, there are guys that I know because I'm an absolute sicko. Like I've always kind of been a fan of Delano Banton, who has had a good game in this game. Tamani Kamara is an interesting sort of role player prospect. Ryan Repair was an interesting draft prospect recently. Chris Murray was a first-round pick this year, but it was a pretty dire situation for Portland in this game. And again, the Hawks have massive injuries too. So I'm not saying it was one-sided. The Hawks are missing 4 out of their top 8 guys right now, including their best player in Trae Young, and they still had by far the healthier roster in this game. So it was a weird spot. I cannot think of a time where the Hawks had been a double-digit underdog in one game, a double-digit favorite in the next game, with the same roster available. And by the way, they might be double-digit underdog again tomorrow because they're playing the Celtics at home, and Boston will have a rest advantage. So it's March in the NBA. It's a lot of weirdness, but I gave all the context on purpose because in the end, this game was kind of exactly what you would think it would have been given the available talent. Now, it's never that simple, but the Hawks won this game by 14 points. They were favored by 11.5 or 12. Portland struggled to score most of the game. The Hawks played with their food a little bit. I thought it was pretty ho-hum. They didn't play like an A-plus game. They played much better on Monday than they did in this game to win close on Monday because they were playing a better team, et cetera, et cetera. We'll go to the offense first. The Hawks had about a 118 offensive rating in this game. That's very solid. It's not incredible, but certainly very solid. They shot it really well in this game, which certainly helped. I actually wonder what would have happened if the Hawks weren't shooting very well, but they did. 52% from the field in this game, 39% from 3, and 80% at the free throw line. That combination of shooting splits will get you a lot of good situations, let's just say. But that was really the only area on the stat sheet, as far as the shooting was concerned, that the Hawks were good in on offense. They actually only had 23 assists and 17 turnovers. That's a pretty rough number on both of those ledgers. Only 8 offensive rebounds in this game, only 20 free throw attempts. So, like, of the 4 factors that are kind of statistically what you're looking for, they did not do much besides shoot the ball well. But they shot the ball well, and that is the most important of the factors. So there you go. And also, they got big games from Dejounte Murray in particular, and also Garrison Mathews off the bench with a season high 21 points for Garrison. So that was enough production. Defensively, they did hold the Blazers to a very meager 106 offensive rating in this game. They did allow Banton to get kind of loose with 31 points. And aside from the first quarter from Tamani Kamara, there wasn't much else besides Banton. Portland actually shot the ball well too, though, in this game, making it a little bit closer than it might have been. One area where the Hawks did struggle was transition defense. That's not anything new. They've been pretty bad in that area at times this year. And Quinn Snyder said post-game that was kind of the one area that he was perturbed by, it seemed. Portland had 16 fast break points in this game. That was a lot. There were definitely some moments along the way when the Hawks were kind of wobbly getting back. That could be attentiveness. That could be personnel. It's all those things put together into one. It's been a problem all year long for the Hawks, so that's worth noting. But that was kind of their only really rough area. They did force 19 turnovers, which is a good number, and of course they led directly to 26 points. That's a huge number of points off turnovers, and that allowed them to be in a comfortable spot on the whole. They did a good job on the glass in this game defensively, and only allowed 10 free throw attempts, which is an elite figure there also. So in the end, a win is a win is a win. And I will be the first to say, I know Dejounte said it tonight as well, you don't want to take anything for granted in the NBA. I'm always the first person to say, like, there's nothing assured about the NBA. When the Hawks play a bad team, I will always be like, nothing's guaranteed. When the Hawks play a good team that they're supposed to lose to, quote unquote, they can win. Obviously, we saw that sort of in the opposite way on Monday when the Hawks were seemingly dead, down 30, and they came back and won. So these are all pros. Every game matters. Anybody can beat you, but a win is a win is a win. It's also wise to keep in mind, though, that Portland was, again, I don't mean this in a mean way. They were basically not an NBA team tonight, in my opinion. They have professional players. They have fringe guys, and they have some young guys who are going to be really good players. I still believe in Scoot Henderson for one, but that was, in my mind, the worst opponent the Hawks have seen this year. And they won the game comfortably, which is good. And again, the Hawks are still missing players as well, so they get a little bit of an asterisk on the other side of things. But this game is not going to go into the Hall of Fame reel by any means, but it's a win for the Hawks, and that is all that matters in some ways. It helped them in the standings. I know there is a ongoing, every single day battle in my mentions and on Hawks Twitter about whether the Hawks should be trying to win or trying to lose. It's kind of funny. I'm staying out of the fray on that one, but I know one thing: the Hawks are trying to win every night, and that's been evident with how they're handling the rotations and all that stuff. So they won. They are in a better spot as far as the play is concerned. We'll talk about that later on in the podcast. But there you go, a ho-hum, taking care of business kind of win, and that is and they all count the same in the standings at the end of the season. All right, we'll have more coming up on how this game actually unfolded, but first I'm going to tell you about our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience are what we're going winning trophy. That's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything they're looking for to maintain your vehicle and also level it up to peak possible performance. They have superchargers, they have roof racks, they have exhaust kits, LED headlights, and they have much, much more than that. Whether it's a speed, power, or style, eBay Motors will have you covered across the board, and they have over 122 million parts. That's a lot of parts for your number one ride or die. You will always find exactly what you're looking for at eBay Motors. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your parts guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money is coming back to you. Because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, but you are absolutely not burning any cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices that you're looking for, it is very easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win that you are seeking. And you can keep your ride or die alive right now at ebaymotors.com. One more time, the place to go is ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, so the game flow in this one, and the Hawks did start this game off actually with back-to-back threes from Dejounte Murray and DeAndre Hunter to go up 6-0. Is like, all right, the Hawks are going to get this thing on and popping, and it'll be over sooner rather than later. It wasn't that quick. Portland scored the next 7 points. Tamani Kamara, who I mentioned before, actually made his first 5 shots in the first quarter, and the Hawks had a bunch of turnovers. They had 5 giveaways in the first 9 minutes. Veet had a couple of those as well. Rotationally, only 9 guys played out of the 10 who were available in this spot for Atlanta. Now, that might seem strange because the Hawks were so shorthanded, and of course they won this game pretty comfortably, but there is a rhyme or reason for that. Number one, they were down 8 guys, so they only had 10 available. They went to Dylan Windler more than they have been recently because it seemed pretty clear to me right away that Wes Matthews was a guy that the Hawks were trying to steer clear of. And that makes sense because, of course, you never want to overlook a team, but strategically, if you were to say, which team do we need Wes Matthews against more? This Portland zombie team or Boston tomorrow, you would say Boston. And the Hawks are, they've been taking it easy with Wes all year long. I think he might have played in a couple back-to-backs, but not very many. He's usually been on one side or the other of those. And at his age, they don't want to push him too hard. And they do actually need him against Boston. He gave them a lot on Monday. He's a good sort of scrappy defender against Tatum and Brown, et cetera. So the Hawks DNP'd him. That made sense. They gave more minutes to Windler, and that did not obviously hurt them in the scoreboard in this game as well. The Hawks actually down at the end of the first quarter. Portland made 5 threes in the first. That kind of was a big part of that. But the Hawks were not good offensively to open this game. They had 5 turnovers, no offensive rebounds, and they shot the ball below the league average in that first quarter. But from that point forward, they were really good until the fourth one, which was kind of mostly garbage time. The middle quarters, the Hawks scored 74 points in 24 minutes, which is obviously fantastic in any context. The Hawks had a beautiful possession in the second quarter with some ball movement, with the backup unit on the floor. 4 or 5 crisp passes ended up with Garrison swinging the ball to Dylan Windler for a corner 3 that forced a timeout from Portland. Windler actually had by far his most productive stretch of his Hawks career so far, obviously a short-lived career to this point. But Bruno had a nice look to him for a cut on a layup, and then Windler hit 2 threes in a row after that. He actually had 11 points in about 5 minutes, and that actually shattered his previous season high in scoring. His career high is actually 15. He was on pace for that and then didn't score again in the game, so that still stands. And just as a fun fact, his career high actually came against the Hawks in 2019, I believe it was. Sorry, 2021, as a member of the Cavs. So that is still up for grabs for Dylan Windler, but he got them some good minutes in that second quarter. The Hawks still couldn't shake loose. They were in the game. It was competitive the whole first half. They were actually losing, like midway through the second quarter. They were tied late in the first half, and then they finished pretty strong, go up by 7 at halftime. I said this in real time, so it's not like revisionist. The Hawks didn't play that well in the first half. They just didn't. But they were up 7 because Portland is Portland. And the Hawks also made 7 threes in the second quarter alone. That will solve a lot of problems for you, of course. But they had 10 turnovers. Defensively, they were a little bit shaky, but they did have actually 10 steals in the first half, which matched their season high for a half. And I believe they ended up with only 12 or 13. But the turnovers were profitable. And by the way, the steals are the live ball variety. Those lead to generating more points off of them. And as I mentioned before, the Hawks had 20-plus points off turnovers. That was a huge kind of swing in their direction. In the third quarter, they kind of broke it open a little bit. It was an 11-2 run to open things up. Made their first 5 shots in the third. Went up by 16 points. It waxed away in a little bit. It was like within 9 again, briefly. Garrison had a 4-point play. late in the third quarter. Portland was a total mess as well. Some young guy mistakes, playing a lot of rookies. They actually had almost back-to-back defensive 3-second violations that lead to technical fouls, which lead to free throws. And you hardly ever see a team get called for more than one of those in a whole game. And they got 2 in like 3 minutes. It was a kind of a weird situation. And again, 2 free points for the Hawks. Speaking of Garrison Mathews, he actually had his new season high early in the fourth quarter and could have had a real chance to have a new career high, which is currently 28. But he fouled out, actually, with 8 minutes to go. Garrison's not afraid to mix it up. 6 fouls in 22 minutes for Garrison Mathews in this game, but no harm, no foul there. Just kind of a funny little subplot. The offense did kind of slow considerably in the fourth quarter. Not only they only had 20 points in the whole quarter, which was not fantastic. They only had 9 points with in the first 7.5 minutes of the fourth. That cracked the door open. I'm not saying I was at any point worried the Hawks were going to lose the game, but it was a 10-point game with 5 minutes to go. That's not over by any means. A couple hot shooting nights from somebody, and it's really in the balance. So the Hawks didn't put the game away the way they probably could have or should have in the fourth quarter. But then Capella had 4 straight points. Murray got a bucket to put the game away, go by 16 points with 3.5 minutes to go, and that was kind of it. I will do my usual quip about the fact that there was a timeout on the court with 90 seconds to go, a minute and a half in the fourth quarter. The Hawks were up by 18, crucially, into a timeout. It wasn't like a live ball situation, a full-on timeout. They go to the bench, and they come out of the break, again, up 18 with 9 seconds to go with the starters on the floor. And I was like, what is going on? Now, they immediately got Dejounte off with literally within 5 seconds. But Bogey and Capella played. Again, it's a minute and a half, but I don't really get it. I mean, it kind of came up with Jalen Johnson recently when he got hurt in the fourth quarter. We probably should have been in the game. The only thing I will say, just to be fair, is that the Hawks only had 10 guys, and we only had 9 guys available in this game. But this time, 9 seconds to go, just put in Dylan Windler and Trent Forrest and whoever else you want. I guess Garrison fouled out, but so they probably had to have somebody of relevance on the court. But I would definitely not go with Capella and Bogey, the 2 old guys, as the guys who stand on the floor. Anyway, does it matter? Not that much, but there you go. Quickly before we move on to the player-by-player analysis in this game, a quick standings check. The Hawks actually are now still up by 5.5 games on Brooklyn with 10 games to play. The next actually won a game tonight against Washington, but I believe the magic number for the Hawks right now to at least clinch a play-in berth is 6, and the Hawks have 10 games left. So that's a huge, huge, huge advantage. Magic number, if you don't know what that means that any combination of Nets losses or Hawks wins to get to 6, because they're up 5.5 games, but it's functionally 4.5 because Portland has a tiebreaker on the Hawks. So if they tie, it's not Portland. Brooklyn has the tiebreaker on the Hawks. So if they tie, the advantage goes to the Nets. But practically speaking, even if the Hawks go 0-10, which they're probably not going to do, Brooklyn would have to go 6-5 to finish them off. I don't think that's probably going to happen. So anyway, it's 99%. It's not 100 by any means, but a huge commanding lead there. The Hawks also try and chase down the Bulls for the 9 seed. The Bulls did win tonight, and that made it even more urgent that the Hawks not blow a game that they probably needed to win, and they didn't. They're a game and a half behind Chicago at this point, but also like it is with Brooklyn, the Bulls have a tiebreaker because they won the first 2 games this year. The Hawks do see the Bulls one more time, so they can't flip the tiebreaker, but they can get a head-to-head win. That would be pretty big. So I think that probably any realistic path to the Hawks getting the 9 seed involves beating Chicago head-to-head. But that's very much in play. The Bulls are the favorite in that matchup because the Hawks still have some tough games remaining. And for instance, their next 2 games are against Boston and Milwaukee. Those are at home, but those are not games the Hawks are going to be favored in. So they'll have to have some fireworks to get above Chicago. But I think that it's overwhelmingly likely the Hawks and Bulls will play in the 9-10 matchup. And that battle is to see who gets to host that game as the 9 seed. So there you go. We'll have more on that later. I promise you there'll be much, much, much more playing coverage as April arrives. Okay, we'll have more coming on this podcast about the player-by-player evaluations and what's up next for the Hawks. But first, I'm going to tell you about our friends at Amazon Fire TV. Amazon Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. And Fire TV offers the most amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick you can plug into your existing TV. It provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to fire up your Fire TV. And Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On as well, and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences in addition to all of that. And Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and much more. Keep you up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, from March Madness to the NBA, college basketball on the women's side as well, MLB, football when it's in season, and much, much more. Not to mention the great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, and cooking videos, and much, much more even beyond that. And check out Fire TV channels and Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you have checked them out in the past, and again, that's Fire TV channels, you should do that. Trust me on this. To learn more, the place to go is amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. One more time, the place to go, amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. All right, and to the player evaluations in this game, and lots of good, I will say, for a comfortable win for the Hawks. We'll start with the guy who played the fewest. I was actually, Trent Forrest played less than Dylan Windler in this game, which is kind of an upset. Trent actually missed all 4 of his shots from the field, but had 4 assists, had 2 points, -5 in the plus-minus. He played with Dejounte a little bit, but mostly when the Hawks had Dejounte, they were solid. Actually, the co-minutes between Dejounte and Trent were actually worse than the Trent-only minutes for whatever reason. There's kind of mostly noise there, but he had the worst plus-minus along with Windler. Dylan had 11 points in that 5-minute span. That's all he had in the game. He missed his last 2 shots, but 11 points, 2 rebounds, had a steal, looked fine. Obviously, he is the 9th guy of 9 and the 10th guy of 10 right now of who's available. But there you go. He gave them some useful minutes off the bench. Bruno Fernando, 7 points, 9 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 blocks. He did have 5 turnovers. Bruno has a penchant for that, between moving screens and just kind of some crazy passes every once in a while. But nice flashes from Bruno. The downside was a little bit low in this one. I thought Clint was better, but I thought that Bruno did play a solid game off the bench. Garrison Mathews, I mentioned before, he fouled out in this game, but not before he had 21 points. That's a new season high for Garrison. And by the way, the previous season high he set 4 days ago. So he's out. He has his 2 biggest scoring games of the season have come in the last 5 days. Pretty impressive. 5 of 9 from 3. Got to the line for 6 free throw attempts. I believe those were both 3-shot fouls. That's not true. One 3-shot foul, and he also had a couple of the technical free throws after the defensive 3-second violations. But he was really good in this game. Lots of praise from Quinn post-game about how he's always staying ready and working on his game. He has been a little bit more adept and aggressive off the dribble in recent days, which is not a coincidence, I don't think. So some growth from Garrison, even though he's a veteran in this league. To the starters in this spot. Vit Krejci was not quite as dominant as he was on Monday. He was fine, 7 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. He was better in the second half for sure than he was in the first half, where he kind of struggled. He did have 2 block shots, a couple of nice highlight plays. Everyone's in on Vit. I know I've always liked Vit, but there you go. Hunter wasn't the best that he's ever been. Ironically, he was plus 20, which is a game best, but he was only 4 of 6 on Tuesdays, actually fine, but 1 of 6 from 3. 13 points, though, 5 rebounds. He played fine. Nothing great, but he was certainly fine. Clint Capella is playing really well. I'm saying that a lot recently, but it really is true. Like, ever since his legs kind of came back a couple weeks ago, he looks really good. 13 points, 10 rebounds, 4 steals for Clint, also 3 blocks. Didn't miss a shot from the field, 5 of 5. Just another rock solid night from him. Bogey played 37 minutes. I don't love that. For everything I just said about Wes Matthews and how it's smart to not play him tonight, to have him be able to sort of be ready to play tomorrow against Boston, I would have probably tried to get Bogey off the floor for less minutes than that. 37 minutes is a lot for him on a back-to-back. He played well. 16 points, 5 assists, 3 steals for Bogey on 5 of 9 from 2, 2 of 7 from 3. But it's a little bit worrisome. We'll see how he looks in the follow-up on Thursday. And then Dejounte, I thought was awesome. And so did Quinn. Quinn led his post-game press conference. He kind of sat down. He doesn't always give the opening statement, but sometimes he does when he has something he definitely wants to say. And he went very positively about Dejounte, and with good reason. Murray had this streak coming in of 3 straight games of 40 points or more against Portland. He just loves playing Portland for whatever reason. Of course, right now, Portland's bad, which is helpful. But he didn't get to that. but he had 30 on efficient shooting. He was 9 of 12 on twos, 4 of 8 on threes, 7 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, 1 turnover. He was in control of this game. Like, I thought it was one of his better performances in recent days. He's had bigger scoring games where I think he actually not played as well as he did tonight. He was in control. He played solid defense, I thought, at the point of attack in this game. And more of that. Obviously, it's easy for him to kind of slot in as the number one guy right now because he is the number one guy right now without Trey. But I think that he was sort of an all quadrant positive in this game, which is really good to see. And the Hawks hold serve. That was the theme of the evening in a lot of different ways. From here, I mentioned before, but the Hawks do play the Celtics again tomorrow, or today, as I listen to this podcast, on Thursday, in a rematch of the game they had on Monday. I mentioned this scheduling quirk about a week ago now, but I'll say it again now. Boston has not left the city of Atlanta. There were 2 G League games that they actually were. Their G League team actually was also playing at College Park. It's an interesting setup, but Boston literally has been here since Sunday. They came in Sunday. They played again Monday. They're just hanging out in Atlanta. They practiced, but they're going to have a massive rest advantage in the game because not only, obviously the Hawks are at home, and that's always an advantage to have, but Boston hasn't been traveling, and they didn't have to play a game today. Now, it was a relatively breezy game for the Hawks, but they had to try the whole way. It wasn't a total blowout, and Boston was sitting up with their feet up. So we'll see how that all looks in the near future. But for now, that'll be a nice challenge. I actually would be extremely intrigued to see how Boston looks after they got made fun of a lot nationally for what transpired on Monday. And, I made sure to credit the Hawks, and the Hawks deserve a ton of credit for what they did on Monday. But Boston, when you're the best team in the league and you blow a 30-point lead to an undermanned team, that's going to get a lot of heat. And that we'll see how they follow up that. By the way, right now, as I'm recording this podcast, late on Wednesday into Thursday, Boston is a 13-point favorite in the game. That could change based on injury situations. Boston's got some guys who are listed as questionable as of this moment. Drew Holiday, who did not play on Monday, is questionable. Al Horford, who did play on Monday, is questionable. So, and a couple more beyond that. But so we'll see on that. Also, the Hawks running back-to-back, so there's always a little bit more injury uncertainty. We won't know who's going to play for the Hawks until Thursday afternoon, I would guess. So, but yeah, if that number holds, that will be the biggest underdog the Hawks have been in a game this year. Does that matter? Does that mean they won't win? No. It just means that that's a tough spot for the Hawks. But again, they were 10.5-point underdogs on Monday, and they ended up winning in historic fashion, shall we say. So all eyes on that one. I will be covering that game, as I always do on the podcast. So please stay tuned, and please subscribe to the show. Also, if you are an audio-only subscriber, that means places like Apple and Spotify, Pocket Cast, etc., you get some bonus content from the folks at Locked On Sports Atlanta. They host the postcast, mostly after games, and that goes into the feed for the price of $0, just in addition to what I already do, so nothing less from me. They have their own YouTube channel, but they are on our audio feeds as well. But also just subscribe, rate, review, anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify especially, but anywhere you prefer. And if you really love the show, the best place to possibly support the show is to download the podcast multiple times at multiple channels. That does a great job. Also support our sponsors. That's always important as well. Follow the show on Twitter /X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there as well at BT Rowland. I write about the Hawks somewhat regularly at patreon.com/BT Rowland. I did not write today, unfortunately, because I'm shorthanded on time and all that stuff, but hopefully back to a more normal schedule in the near future, and hopefully a better background. My microphone will be back, all that stuff in the coming days. We'll see. I won't guarantee a timeline on all that stuff, but please subscribe to the show. Thanks for listening tonight to the podcast. I really do appreciate that as well. Enjoy your Thursday, and we'll see you after the game between the Hawks and the Celtics in less than 24 hours at this point in time. So we'll see you then.